How dangerous are Chinese state-sponsored cyber attacks for the American economy and infrastructure? The details on hacking group APT40 coming up today on Business Matters. Good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining me here today. I'm your host, Don Ma. So we're seeing a new record high today for the S&P 500, closing above 5,600 for the first time. So big tech was the big winner today. A good day for chip makers like Taiwan Semiconductors. The other major indexes followed suit. The Dow up over 1% and the Nasdaq 1.1%. The big loser, though, today is online marketing platform HubSpot after reports Google is no longer interested in acquiring the company. It went down 12%. Now, a win for Elon Musk as a judge dismisses a lawsuit brought by former Twitter employees. The employees wanted $500 million in compensation after being laid off when Musk bought the firm in 2022. The complaint alleged they should have received a bigger severance package under the Employee Retirement Income Security Act. But today, the judge said that the act does not cover their claims. The law firm representing the employees says it's considering its legal options after the dismissal. And Microsoft is giving up its observer seat on OpenAI's board. It could be a move for Microsoft to diversify from the artificial intelligence firm amid antitrust concerns. So the tech company took up the role last year. It allowed Microsoft to attend board meetings and access confidential information. But it gave the company no voting rights on matters including electing and choosing directors. The company is now giving up the seat. Microsoft has reportedly already invested more than $10 billion into the artificial intelligence company. The move has US and UK regulators taking a closer look at possible antitrust issues. And the impact of $20 an hour minimum wage in California is starting to show here. Many major fast food chains say they have cut hours and raised prices just to stay in business, while workers say they are able to use the extra money to cover expenses. And the owner of several Jersey Mike's said labor accounts for about 35% of his costs. He noted that it wasn't just entry-level workers who got a pay boost. Shift leaders, assistant managers, and more up the ladder got raises as well. Experts are saying it's just a bit too early right now to see the long-term impacts of the wage increase. So far, the industry has continued to see job growth, according to the Labor Department. We know the Federal Reserve makes policy decisions based on economic data, like inflation, for example, jobs, etc. But what if the government data the Fed is using itself is not reliable? That's exactly the concern a new study is raising. This is a report released Tuesday by the American Statistical Association. It found federal data agencies, statistical agencies, are at risk of not being able to produce accurate data. And they are facing increasing challenges like budget cuts, and fewer people are responding to their surveys. The report made some recommendations to modernize the system, including more funding from Congress. Now, if changes aren't made, the study suggests that inaccurate data could put a strain on essential government programs. So yesterday, we told you the US and its allies warning that a hacking group sponsored by the Chinese Communist Party is a threat to global networks. It is a very important topic that we wanted to go deeper into for you. For example, what are the weaknesses in the US critical infrastructure that allows cyber attacks to happen? I spoke to professional security advisor at My Smart Privacy, Rex Lee. Here's what he says. Okay, Rex, thank you very much for your time today. Now, Australia recently accused Chinese state-backed hackers, namely APT or APT40, of breaching government networks. So I'm personally curious here, how do we know that this is a state-backed group?
Well, typically by the hallmark of the attack, a lot of the groups out there, whether it's APT40 or other APT groups from China, or Russian nation-state hackers, such as sandworm, typically will use the same attack methods. These attacks have real implications.
And now, Australia was recently in the news, but let's talk about the U.S. What kind of threats would this kind of cyber attacks have on Americans?
Oh, it'd be huge. These attacks have massive implications, not only on the economy, but within critical infrastructure. Most recently, Black Cat. I don't know if you're familiar with the Black Cat attack on health change networks associated with United Health Group, which is United Healthcare. That attack hit our medical industry. And so far, that attack, the cost of that data breach is north of $1 billion. This is going to result in changes for the insurance industry, as well as how these companies and these governments protect their critical infrastructure from these types of attacks.
Well, speaking of these attacks, in the context of cyber threat, what are some of the biggest weaknesses, would you say, in terms of infrastructure that makes the U.S. vulnerable?
Well, if you look, there's several things at play here. If you look at the weak links in the chain of communications, whether it's internet or telecom, all these global threat actors would have to do is target one of those data centers and take it down either through a cyber attack or a low-tech social engineering attack where you can basically use old school tactics and just blow it up. This means that we're hugely vulnerable to these types of cybersecurity attacks and social engineering attacks. And just those two companies alone, Microsoft and Amazon, if those data centers went down, about 90% of the economy would be impacted. Basically, you could shut the economy down with a couple of cybersecurity attacks or social engineering attacks on these data centers where everything is centralized today. These are the vulnerabilities that we need to be looking at within our critical infrastructure.
Final question, what are some ways to improve upon these weaknesses?
Well, you know, what really needs to happen is we need to be decentralized regarding these technologies. And within the operating system world, businesses can protect themselves by using decentralized operating systems, which are non-Android Linux operating systems that support smartphones, tablet PCs, desktop PCs and servers. These are some of the things you can do. These attacks have real implications, not just on our economy, but life and death. If you go back to the AT&T, when they were down, FirstNet. AT&T is the company that runs FirstNet, which is the network for our first responders for disasters like in Houston. All of the first responders responding to the power outages in Houston are using FirstNet devices. Well, if AT&T is down, FirstNet is down. And you can see that it becomes a life or death situation. What we haven't seen regarding the AT&T outage, T-Mobile and Verizon outage, but mainly AT&T, are real data on who was hurt. If a crime was being committed while one of these outages was happening and violence occurred and people were hurt or accidents, or you needed to get a hold of a hospital, you can't do that during one of these outages. This was the case yesterday regarding Spectrum, because Spectrum also sells phone services along with their internet services, which means that a lot of companies, including several hospitals in San Antonio, were dependent on Spectrum for their phone systems. Their phone systems are down, not just their internet.
All right, Rex, thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Don.
And today, EPA head Michael Regan in the hot seat. Congressional lawmakers question him over the regulatory costs on businesses the agency has imposed during his 3.5 years at the helm. Here's the story.
$1.6 trillion of new federal regulatory costs.
EPA head Michael Regan took questions from Congress Wednesday. A major theme, regulatory burden.
One agency in less than 4 years has imposed more cost than the entire federal government did under the 8 years of all things, the Obama administration.
Representative Pat Fallon suggests the EPA has been overreaching. Rep. Tim Burchett says complying with new rules increases costs for businesses.
Your all's rule on lime manufacturing plants imposes cost of $2.5 billion on a small industry with a $2.3 billion in revenue. Do y'all think it's necessary?
Regan answered.
The rule that has been proposed is done in a way that we believe maximizes protection from an environmental health standpoint. But as I mentioned to a colleague earlier, this is something that I would love for our staffs to have a conversation about.
Regan says his EPA tries to evaluate the burden of all its rules.
And we weigh that against the opportunities for these companies to invest in new technologies that might provide efficiencies in some other areas, while also lowering the pollution burden on the environment.
Rep. Byron Donalds voiced concerns that the EPA's Clean Power Plan regulates coal and natural gas too harshly.
Under the EPA's Clean Power Plan 2.0, essentially coal will be regulated out of existence.
Donalds asked whether the plan would raise power prices for poor families. Regan answered.
These control technologies don't have to be put in until 2020, 2031, 2032, so we're talking about some time down the road. Number two, all of our cost estimates say that the actions we're taking will only potentially increase price by less than 1%.
The Trump administration rolled back EPA rules considerably, cutting regulatory costs for businesses. Former Trump officials suggest he may do it again if reelected.
We would have significant impacts to our water quality. Emerging contaminants like PFAS would run amok. We would continue to have lead-poisoned water all across the country.
Trump's former EPA Chief of Staff, Mandy Gunasakara, outlined plans for a new EPA in a Heritage Foundation book. Regan fears the environment would be greatly damaged if those plans are enacted.
All right, let's take a break. And coming up, state-owned entities in China caught transporting cooking oil and fuel in the same tankers without cleaning between uses. And New York City is set to ban the small bottles hotels use for your shampoo and body wash. We'll have that and more coming up in just a moment. Don't go away. And welcome back. An indefinite strike declared at Samsung Electronics. Unionized workers want to put pressure on South Korea's biggest company. The announcement comes on the heels of a temporary 3-day strike, which involved about 6,500 members from the National Samsung Electronics Union. Workers are calling for higher pay and benefits. The union is accusing managers of being unwilling to negotiate. In a statement, Samsung said that it will ensure no disruptions occur in the production lines and that the company is committed to good faith negotiations with the union. And in China, at least 2 state-owned entities have been found using oil tankers to transport both coal-derived oil and edible oil without any cleaning procedure in between. Media reports say that trucks carried liquid fuel were also used to transport edible liquids, such as cooking oil, for example, syrup, and soybean oil. Here's more on that.
The practice was first revealed in an investigative report by local media in Beijing. Chinese state broadcaster CCTV condemned the practice, calling it immoral, adding that the mixed usage of the tankers is just like poisoning. To save on costs, many operators don't clean the tankers when switching contents between edible and inedible oils. An official document issued 11 years ago shows Chinese local authorities instructed the oil industry not to illegally mix the use of oil tankers. Some Chinese internet users say this is a common hidden practice in the industry that has allegedly been going on for nearly 2 decades. Associate professor at the University of Technology, Sydney, Feng Changyi, said this practice only proves that there's a lack of respect for human life in China.
And fast fashion is quickly filling up landfills. In China alone, tens of millions of tons of textiles are tossed aside each year. Now, some industry fashionistas are starting a new trend to tackle the urgent textile crisis. Meet some innovative young designers reusing at a factory in China's East Coast that's recycling to keep fashion moving forward.
From this to this. China is contending with being both the world's largest textile producer and its largest consumer. Data reveals that more than 26 million tons of clothes are thrown away each year in China.
China should be the best place for post-consumer waste because we have manufacturers here, we have consumers here, we have the technologies built up like in last several decades to recycle the waste.
This is one of the first stages of a new life for discarded textiles. Wenzhou Tiancheng Textile Company is one of the largest cotton recycling plants in China. But it's not just the ability to recycle the material that is needed. The perception and standards have to keep up too.
Used clothing is not that bad. Actually, we can really take advantage of such commodity to develop or build a new circular fashion system. It's a significant change, and surely we need more clear signals from the very top, and then of companies and the fashion brands and from to these manufacturers. And they will have kind of assurance, okay, making investment in this area makes sense.
Textile waste is an urgent global problem. According to a fashion sustainability nonprofit, only 12% of textiles are recycled worldwide, and only a mere 1% of cast-off clothing returns as new garments. For now, the challenge to change is coming from innovative and independent designers. 33-year-old designer Da Bao founded Times Remake in 2019. His Shanghai-based brand takes second-hand clothes and refashions them into new garments.
Something very bad in our lives is consumerism. I think excessive consumerism really eats away at people's minds.
But more needs to be done. Textile waste will only continue to grow until recycling clothes is in vogue.
The generation born after the millennium, that the way of thinking is so different. Yeah, so that's why I see like we need some time after maybe 1 or 2 generations that recycling is something running in their veins, that it's part of their habits.
Now, in the not too distant future, you will not be able to get those small bottles of shampoos and lotion at New York hotels. A law signed by New York Governor Kathy Hochul back in 2021 goes into effect January 1st, 2025. And what it does is that it bans mini shampoos, conditioners, as well as body washes and lotions that are in plastic containers for hotels and motels with less than 50 rooms. And the restrictions were supposed to start in 2023, but hotel industry lobbyists pushed for a delay so hotel owners could use their stock of bottles already they had on hand. And the ban does not go into effect until 2026 for hotels with less than 50 rooms. Meanwhile, fast food establishments are ramping up their efforts to be more sustainable. For Starbucks, part of the effort involves free reusable straws. So Starbucks says today that anyone who orders a cold handcrafted drink like an iced coffee will be gifted a brightly colored reusable straw, and the giveaway is part of the coffee giant's broader efforts to become more eco-friendly and hopefully also generate revenue. The chain has also been ramping up discounts and offers in the past few months to rev up sales. French authorities are doubling efforts against fake merchandise and knockoffs of luxury brands. That's as Paris prepares to host the Olympics this summer. Here's more.
Alongside the athletes and sports fans, Paris 2024 is also attracting the usual wave of unofficial and counterfeit merchandise. According to the International Olympic Committee, the most faked products are clothing and items featuring the mascot. Paris 2024 organisers and the IOC have both joined French brand protection group Unifab, which has had some success, according to its head, Delphine Savarti-Sobrera.
We've been working a lot ahead of the Olympic Games. There were a lot of operations carried out, with training over almost 18 months for operational agents, the police, customs, the gendarmerie, fraud prevention. And there were big, major operations like a few weeks ago, the closure of more than 10 stores in the Saint-Ouen area, which is 500 metres from the Olympic Village. Thousands of fake products were seized to really clean up this area where there were a lot of counterfeits in circulation.
In total, 63,000 items of clothing, shoes, and leather goods were confiscated and destroyed, and 10 people arrested in that one raid. And the problem is not just Olympic fakes. Visitors to France often seek out luxury goods from brands like Louis Vuitton and Chanel. Those who cannot afford the real thing are possibly tempted by cheaper fakes. In recent years, the authorities have dialed up their efforts to stem the flow of counterfeit goods. Customs seized 20.5 million counterfeit products in 2023, a 78% increase on the 11.5 million confiscated in 2022.
Criminals who know that counterfeiting brings huge returns with little investment also engage in other illegal activities, such as arms trafficking, prostitution, human trafficking, etc. So people should know that buying a counterfeit also means financing major trafficking or even terrorism.
Unifab has also opened a museum to help educate people on the big business of luxury fake items. Counterfeit branded clothing alone cost companies in France an estimated average of $1.83 billion in lost sales each year between 2018 and 2021. That's according to the European Union's Intellectual Property Office. The crackdown has drawn some criticism, though, with accusations that informal market sellers of legal second-hand goods have been caught up in the operation against counterfeiters and petty crime in the Paris suburbs. Police did not respond to a request for comment.
Now, the Boston Celtics just won its record 18th NBA title, and now its current owner wants to score another title. Wyc Grousbeck recently announced that he will be putting the team up for sale. In an interview on CNBC, Grousbeck said he wants to sell the Celtics for a record price. The record for a North American sports team is $6 billion. That's how much the NFL team, the Washington Commanders, fetched last year. Forbes' most recent list of NBA teams' valuations has the Celtics as the fourth most valuable franchise. It's valued at $4.7 billion. It's just behind the Golden State Warriors, New York Knicks, and Los Angeles Lakers. Lighter, slimmer, and more AI features. Samsung Electronics has unveiled the latest version of its Galaxy Z Fold 6. The world's largest smartphone maker is trying to win back consumers after it pioneered the foldable segment 5 years ago. But data shows its foldable phone shipment share fell a drastic 81% in 2022 as competitors entered. Phone upgrades include a longer battery life, higher resolution camera, and artificial intelligence features, like listening mode that provides voice interpretation. The company has listed the Z Flip version for about $1,100 and the Z Fold starting at about $1,900. All right, and that's all for the stories we have for you today. Thank you very much for watching. And if you have any feedback for the episode, please just let me know. Email me at business@ntd.com or leave a comment online. I do read them. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.